Well, hello class, and welcome to our discussion about impromptu speaking. And before you turn off that video and drop my class, because I know historically impromptu speaking has been a source of student nerves and anxiety, let me kind of walk you through it, and hopefully it will be something you enjoy actually. I've had students over the years say that this was a really fun speech, and Mr. Fab, can we do more impromptu speeches? That would make this class better. So hopefully that's your experience, and hopefully the exercise will help you become a more confident speaker. That's the hope. Anyway, let's talk about the abstract impromptu speech and why we have it in the curriculum. Number one, how many of you have ever had a job interview where you felt like you were answering questions kind of off the cuff? You know, they're firing these questions at you and you didn't have a lot of time to prepare. Well, practicing this can help you with that. How many of you have had a job interview and you felt like you really wanted to talk about a certain topic? So for instance, your work ethic. And you feel like I am going to outwork anybody. Right? But that question never comes up, that direct question about your work ethic. You're going to have to find a way to interject it into the conversation. And this abstract impromptu speech can help you do that. So let's talk about the specific speech. You're going to be given two topics, and it's going to be given to you just before 2 minutes before you speak. Could be blue or garbage. This is just an example, obviously. It could be, anything. So these are pretty randomly selected topics, as you can tell. And you're going to have 2 minutes to prepare. You're going to jot down probably, on a note card or small piece of paper, a brief outline. Not a full sentence outline, a one-word outline, or a phrase outline if you've read the outlining chapter in your textbook, okay? So you're just jotting down an outline to help jog your memory as you're speaking and preparing for this 3-minute speech. Also, we've covered strategies to deal with your nerves, to control your nerves, hopefully reduce that anxiety, and this is an opportunity for you to practice one of those strategies, okay? So, the impromptu speech can be a little nerve-wracking because there's no real time to prepare for it. So maybe you're practicing your deep breathing, or maybe you're practicing your positive thinking or visualizing. Whatever you selected as, methods of reducing your nervousness can be practiced with this speech. So let's talk about the structure of it. So in the 3 minutes you're going to be speaking, hopefully it follows a similar structure to the one I have on the board. You're going to gain attention, and my recommendation is you gain attention with a story, a narrative, because number one, it pulls us in. Most of us want to hear a story, right? Secondly, it takes up a little bit more time of that 3-minute speech. So if you're concerned, most students are concerned about developing a 3-minute speech in only 2 minutes of prep time. This is a good way to get you off on the right foot, to take a little bit more time, and to draw your audience in. Then the next thing you're going to do is reveal the topic, okay? And for this particular speech, when given the topic blue, I think of depression because of the phrase, I feel blue, okay? So now you've linked blue to depression, right? And you're going to talk about seasonal affective disorder, perhaps. So reveal the topic. You don't have to use those words specifically, the exact words, but something that helps you explain how you got from blue to depression, okay? And that's really what we're trying to do is explain that link. How do you get from, a interview question to your work ethic is really, the important skill here. So the thesis is going to be hopefully something that, you're talking about seasonal affective disorder in, 2 main points, and you'll develop these main points. They don't have to be 3 main points. They can be 2 main points. Sometimes students will get really caught up with the whole 3 main points format and, get really nervous. You can develop 2 main points really well, and that's what the X and the line mean, is just that you are developing the main point. You're using examples, maybe a story. A lot of times people use the narrative. They'll use personal stories. They'll use stories about friends and family, etc. So that's the body of it. And then, of course, the conclusion. Review your main points, restate your thesis, and end on a note of finality, just like the informative and persuasive speech. So it can be the most difficult part is the structure. Most of us don't speak in an impromptu fashion in a very linear way, but do your best to follow that. It kind of emphasizes the format for your informative and persuasive speech. So, how am I going to grade you? 10 points. This is worth 10 points. And the worst grade, the lowest grade you're going to get, is a 6. Because I'm rooting for you, is what I write. And I truly am. I'm rooting for you in all these speeches. This is not an easy subject for a lot of you. And if you get up here and don't say a word, you go blank, or not, if you're on Zoom, because that's how we'll be doing it during the shelter in place, and you really you get stuck, right? Then you're going to get a 6. That's the worst you're going to get, okay? I had a student who got up in front of the class, stood here. It seemed like an eternity. It was probably about 30 seconds. And it was to the point where I got a little nervous. I was hoping this person wasn't just, having some kind of breakdown. I said, hey, are you okay? You don't have to stand there. You can have a seat. You're still going to get the 6 points. And he stood there, it seemed like, another 30 seconds. So he's here about a minute, looking up at the ceiling, looking down at the floor, back of the room, to the left. And he finally sat down, and I was like, hey, you know what, I appreciate it. He said, I just can't do it. I went blank, which happens occasionally, okay? Well, he got a 6. No problem, okay? If you have a delivery that is not distracting, and what I mean by that is you're not umming, you aren't fidgeting, I'm not sitting there counting the number of fillers you have, you're standing up, you're not pacing back and forth, you're not letting the nerves get the best of you, I'm going to give you 1 point. It doesn't have to be a perfect or even near perfect delivery, it just has to be a delivery that doesn't distract, okay? And so that's worth a point. If you have a clear link, if you look at blue, for instance, and you don't even have to take it to a different topic. You can take it very literally and say, so my 3 favorite colors of blue are navy blue, sky blue, and I don't know many colors of blue. I guess turquoise, that's kind of blue. So you can, have a clear link and get a point. If you lose this point, if we have no idea how you got to your topic. So for instance, if you say, oh, today I'm going to talk about the color blue, and let's focus on computers. We're going to talk about Apple computers. What? How did you get there? Well, then you don't get this point, because it was a tangent, it was a non sequitur, if you know your fallacies. Another point, if you speak for 2 minutes, you speak for 2 minutes of the 3 minutes. So you get to a point, you deliver your speech for 2 minutes, you're going to get a point for that. So really, we're looking at a 2 to 3 minute speech, okay? So that will be, I'll let you know, I'll give you the 1 minute left sign. This also means 1 point, okay? So I'll generally do that either on Zoom, put up my finger, and you got the 2 minute point, okay? Or, if in the eventuality that we are in classroom, I will put up the 1 finger for that you may have 1 minute left and you earn the 1 point. This is the most difficult point. The structure is the most missed point. So for instance, following the introduction, body, and conclusion, it's just difficult in an impromptu speech. If you can give me a preview, some couple main points that follow that preview, a review of main points, and you follow the semblance of the structure, I'm going to give you that point. Most people will just tell me a really long story. and they lose that point. And that's fine. I mean, 9 out of 10 is still an A-, right? I will give half points. So for instance, if you had half of the structure, sometimes people will have a beautiful structure and then forget the conclusion. And I'll give them half, so they end up with 9.5. Okay? So this is our impromptu speech. We're going to do this on Zoom, and hopefully, you are able to get through it and feel like it was worthwhile and actually fun. I think that I'd say about 75% of students I've had in the past feel like, oh yeah, I really kind of enjoyed that. That wasn't a bad deal, and I felt like if I could get through an impromptu speech, with no preparation, boy, I can really prepare my speeches and feel more confident about them. So anyway, please ask me questions. I'm sure you have them. I will give a sample impromptu speech so that you can see what to do. Hopefully there's more what to do as opposed to what not to do from my sample. I'll do that in person because otherwise if I record it, it's really not, an impromptu speech. So you have a good day and hang in there. I hope this interests you and I hope you find it valuable, and take care.